hello, Tampa. I hope you had a wonderful weekend, very safe and very healthy. Thank you very much for tuning in once again to our daily Facebook briefings, which now are going to be 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. We have another exceptional guest today, our state attorney and my friend, Andrew Warren, and we will get back to him with some questions in just a moment. I want to give an update on the COVID-19 situation in our community and on a couple of other issues, reopening, talk a little bit about nursing homes. So as of this afternoon, we have 1,448 total cases in Hillsborough County, including 38 deaths. In Florida, we have 40,982 total positive cases with 1,735 deaths. Now we have actually it's 39 deaths, but the deaths that are listed have gone up. As I said last week, they have increased. It says 38 on here, but there was another individual that passed away. So 39 deaths, and all but 4 of those deaths are individuals over the age of 60 years old. The spike in the number of deaths is a result of cases that had spread in 2 nursing homes that were out in the county. There are 2 other long-term care facilities that they have had staff test positive in, so we are looking at that. The county and the city have put together a task force, and they're working with state authorities. They have all of the long-term care locations mapped out, and they are currently visiting each and every one of those locations to talk to the staff and ensure that the proper protocol are being followed. Now, from what I know, the proper protocol is being followed in these long-term care facilities, the ones that our staff has visited in the city of Tampa. But the issue is we all know a lot of individuals can have COVID-19 and be asymptomatic. And so they can come to work where they are screened before they respond to duty, and they can have no symptoms at all, but still have this virus. And all precautions are taken to try and avoid passing this virus on to any of the residents in these long-term care facilities, because they clearly are high risk. But even under the best of circumstances, sometimes this virus gets passed on because it is highly contagious, as we all know, and that a lot of individuals that have it can be asymptomatic. And when I mean a lot, we don't know what the percentage of individuals that are asymptomatic are. We have the antibody tests that are out now, but there's still a margin of error in those antibody tests that is really unacceptable. However, it's the best test that we have at this particular point to determine if someone has actually had COVID-19 already and has been able to recover without knowing that they've had it. My mom is actually in a retirement location, as I have said before on this show, in wonderful, absolutely wonderful, dedicated staff. Matter of fact, my mother's so busy, you practically have to make an appointment just to say hey to my mom. She's so busy. But they do everything that they can to avoid anyone contracting COVID-19 in that location. But again, even with the best attempts, we may see a surge in those nursing homes. And once one gets into a long-term care facility, it's so easily passed on to other residents. So that is a main focus for us right now. We are continuing to focus on the reopening in our community, and we're trying to do that very thoughtfully, making decisions based on the data that's available to us. We are starting to see the ramifications of openings in other locations that literally just flipped the switch and went back to everyday activities. And now the cases are starting to ramp up in those particular areas. So we have to continue to get back up on our feet economically and again in a very thoughtful way while we focus on our health and making sure that everyone is safe in our community. So that means that you still have to socially and physically distance from each other, wearing facial coverings out in public. I cannot underscore the significance of that enough. The surfaces, making sure that you're disinfecting, you're washing your hands, nothing has changed. And if you do fall into those high risk categories, you have, you don't have to stay home. It's not an order, but you are encouraged to stay home if you are in a high risk category. The openings over the weekend have gone very, very well. We had a couple of individuals, I should say bad actors, that weren't adhering to the rules that had been put in place. And so they have been put on notice, and we are dealing with that. But the absolute vast majority of restaurant and retail that chose to open up did so very safely, and they did so adhering to everything that was asked of them. And so we're very, very proud of that. And the businesses are just elated to be able to open back up. And we're happy that the public can go back out in a very safe manner and enjoy restaurants and retail once again. The governor did sign. We're going to open up barbershops, beauty salons, and nail salons this week, and there are listed requirements in those as well. So hopefully that will be yet another step in the right direction to start to get safely back up on our feet. The virus is not over with. It's still out there. It's still very contagious. It can still be very silent, and it can still be very deadly. So we need everybody's cooperation to continue. Um, let's see. Oh, this is National Law Enforcement Week. May 15th is actually National Law Enforcement Day, and it was named as such back in by President Kennedy. And so it's the year that we pay our respects to all of those police officers who have given their lives in the line of duty. And actually, the police department just had their law enforcement memorial last weekend or last week on Tuesday. And because we couldn't have a public event that we usually have and our state attorney participates in every year, we couldn't have the crowd gather. And so they took all the 31 officers that have died in the line of duty in the history of the Tampa Police Department. There is a police car that has each of the individuals' names and the end of watch date on the back of a police car. And so those were lined around Likes Park with their lights on. And as their name was called one by one, the lights were turned off and the bell was tolled for each of those, to pay respects to all of those individuals that have given their lives to keep you and I safe in our community. So my hat's off and my undying respect for those who serve and protect us every day. And June 29th is a particularly sad day in our community. That was the last time that we lost officers in the line of duty, Dave Curtis and Jeff Kokab, 10 years ago, June 29th. So thank God that we haven't lost any other officers, and our thoughts go out to their loved ones as well. So what I need everyone to do, and you know the drill, go to tampagov.net. You've got all the information that you need there on COVID-19. It's going to take you to our One Tampa Relief Program. We were able to help. Our goal was 2,500 residents with their rent, mortgage, and utilities. And we're still going through all of those applications. And I can't remember how many they said they've paid now, but they have paid several hundred of those. I believe they're up to around 400 that they have paid those and going through processing the rest of the applications. We are going to do a phase 2 of the small business recovery. And so stay tuned for that. I'll give you the dates of application and so forth. And we've relaxed the parameters of that so that we'll be able to help more businesses, small businesses in our community. So stay tuned for that information. You can get all of the information you need about testing at our website, tampagov.net. We are still actively testing at Lee Davis Center on 22nd Street in East Tampa and at Raymond James Stadium. We have those drive-throughs. You have to call and make an appointment, 813-272-5900. That's the Hillsborough County lines. I believe they were having a little trouble this morning with their call center. Hopefully that's fixed. Call, get an appointment, and go get tested. It's very important. Hard for us to make decisions about how to address this virus when we don't really know how widely it has spread throughout our community. We're doing a lot better than we were at testing about 1%. Now we're over 2% of our population, but 2% of 1.4 million isn't a lot. So we need people to go out and get tested. It's free. You don't have to have insurance. You make an appointment. They'll take walk-ups, but they would like to have you drive through with an appointment. And you don't have to have any symptoms at all. You just have to want to be tested for COVID-19. So make sure you're going to our website, getting all of that information. Very, very important. Okay, let's get to my esteemed guest. Andrew Warren is the state attorney for the 13th Judicial Circuit. Andrew Warren was elected as a state attorney for Hillsborough County in November of 2016. The Hillsborough County State Attorney's Office works to build a safer community by prosecuting crime, supporting victims, and promoting justice and fairness for everyone. Andrew previously served as a federal prosecutor with the United States Department of Justice. Welcome, Andrew. We appreciate you coming. First of all, I have to ask how your daughters are.
They're very good, Mayor. Thank you so much for asking.
I'm glad to hear. And I see
showing off their artwork.
Displaying the art. Very good. Very nice. All right. So all our agencies have been working together on the Safer at Home order and are encouraging the social distancing. I think it's important for individuals to know that while your office could prosecute any violations, that we are focusing as a community on education and encouragement, just trying to get individuals to understand that personal responsibility and take it very seriously. So talk about the importance of these orders and focusing on compliance in our community.
Sure. Well, first, let me, in recognition of National Law Enforcement Appreciation Week, say thank you to you for your service with TPD and all the brave men and women who serve in uniform, keeping my family safe and everyone else in Hillsborough County. Yeah. In terms of what we're doing on the Safer at Home orders and compliance, we are promoting compliance. That is the key. It's been that way since the beginning through the work that your office has done with the Emergency Policy Group. I think we're all on the same page here that we are much more interested in promoting compliance than we are in prosecuting non-compliance. We've been saying it for the past several weeks, and it continues today. Everyone should continue to act like they have COVID-19, and thank God if they don't. And that means responsible social distancing, washing hands, wiping down things, I got my Florida Gators mask out of my office. But Mayor, just as you have been advocating for the past many weeks, that's what the community should be doing.
Excellent, excellent. I love it. That's one of the ways that, one of the things that I would say early on is, act as if you have this virus and then, conduct yourself accordingly. So the court system in Florida, you're not having any jury trials until early July, but clearly there's still a lot going on out there on the streets. I see it from the daily reports from our police department. So let's talk about how the justice system has been adapting to this pandemic. What is going on at the state attorney's office and within the court system?
Well, we're still open for business. I mean, most of the work that we do every day has continued. Now, our office has adjusted to doing a lot of it remotely in order to make sure that we're not subjecting our own staff to potential harm and risking of infection. But we're continuing to do all the work of investigating cases, charging cases, doing the discovery and litigating issues everything that leads up to trials, it's just that the trials have stopped. So that's what we've been doing over the past couple months, that adjustment to working remotely, but still making sure that the system is moving forward. We have tremendous partners between our public defender, Chief Judge Ron Figueroa, and the Administrative Office of the Courts, our sheriff, all getting together on a regular basis to do what we can to keep the system moving forward, even though that back end of the trials has now been shut down for, well, a month and a half, and it's going to be into July until we're trying cases again.
What's an estimation of, or do you have those numbers of the number of trials that you have on a monthly basis, or uh, like, do you have any of the statistics and how many trials you had during this period in March and April of last year, and how that's gonna, once you open the court system back up, what's that gonna look like?
Yeah, I mean, so we do multiple trials a week in our felony divisions and in
Yes.
our county court. So that's, misdemeanor offenses and juvenile offenses, a much higher number. So we're talking about over the span of a couple months, potentially hundreds of felony trials not going forward, and potentially a multiple of that of county misdemeanor offenses not going forward. Just recently, we put together a list of just the homicide cases that we had set for 2020. And there were some 40 homicide trials set to go in 2020. Now, granted, a lot of these cases are several years old. It
Yeah.
takes that long to get to trial, but that's a huge burden on the system that creates this backlog now where it's basically delaying justice for victims and their families. It's longer for us to hold the offenders accountable, which is why we're working so diligently to make sure we can do everything we can to mitigate against that backlog. Because when the trials start again, it is going to take some time for us to get up and running and bringing people back into the courthouse and trying all these cases.
Yeah, and then you just never know how long a trial is going to take. You can estimate, but you really don't know. And it's a tribute. I'll give a little shout out to uh, law enforcement. First of all, the sheriff's office and the police department. It's a tribute to them that we have really such a low homicide rate in our community. I remember one of the first consulting jobs that I had after I retired from the police department in a particular city. And the chief of police said something about 200 homicides. And I said, 200 in a year? And it was over 200. And he actually said, yes, and that's an improvement from last year. And I said, oh my gosh. I said, we're around 25 in the city of Tampa every year. And, we work to bring those down. But you don't know how good you have it, how safe your community is. Right? You know how safe it is, but it's difficult to put it in perspective until you visit other locations. And then also the incredible individuals, men and women that we have in uniform at the sheriff's office and at the police departments in the different cities that have a much higher solve rate on the homicides as well. So it really is a tribute. And then, as you mentioned, the way that everyone works so well together. I don't know that there's any jurisdiction in the United States where the public defender works so well with the state attorney, with the sheriff's office, with the police department, with the judges, and everyone working together really towards the same goal, getting the bad people off of the streets and ensuring that the good people aren't wrongfully accused. So it is a wonderful not organization, but wonderful the way that all of our organizations work together. And that's a tribute to you, and it's a tribute to all of the other leaders in our community.
Well,
So
thank you.
let's,
Well, I'll take the bet on that because as a federal prosecutor, I got to work in jurisdictions across the country. And I do think that what we have here in Hillsborough is unique. And
yes,
that's a testament to, as you said, our local police chiefs and sheriff and the public defender. And I get to be a part of it as state attorney too. We all just work together because we care about the safety of the community above everything.
yeah. And when you do that, everybody's focused on the same end goal, you can accomplish so much more. So it's wonderful. So along these lines, I was on because I was a police chief and now the mayor, you get whenever there's something dealing with cities that involves law enforcement, then, I often, I won't say always, I often get a call. So I was on a panel for the major city chiefs, and I was on with the chief of police from Seattle, who's a friend of mine, and a couple of others. And I talked about how our domestic violence calls during this pandemic had trended down very slightly, but had trended down somewhat. And she said that theirs had elevated dramatically, and really that is the case, I think, in more jurisdictions than not, that the domestic violence has elevated, but we've seen a slight downward trend. Now, not to be a pessimist, but when you look at that, there can be other reasons for that. And I'm sure that you have seen this. It may not be, is it a downward trend in domestic violence, or are individuals just not reporting those crimes? What's your opinion on that?
Well, our concern is that the lack of an upward trend is because victims and survivors aren't reaching out. I was actually on a conference call with prosecutors from around the country on Friday about this, and we were discussing exactly this issue. And in different jurisdictions, you've seen different
Yeah.
results in terms of calls for service for domestic violence incidents. And the research shows that in a time of crisis and isolation and stress, you expect to see domestic violence increase. And so when we haven't seen it here, usually we think that's a great thing.
Yeah.
But our concern is that the reason why the calls have not gone up is because victims are not reaching out. And you can envision a situation where someone is in an abusive relationship, where now they are not able to go to work during the day to ask for help. They're not able to get access to privacy. They feel trapped in their own home. They're not sure about what's going to happen in the criminal justice system if they do call for help. So that's why our office and all these other local agencies, including Mayor, your office, have partnered together to announce to our community that we are open. We are open here for victims and survivors of domestic violence. Our support for them never closes. We want to make sure that anyone out there who's in a abusive situation understands that they do have options. They can call for help. Injunctions are going forward, arrests, prosecution. We are still here to support victims of domestic violence, even in these unusual circumstances where they feel like they may be trapped.
Yes. Yes, without a doubt. And that's another group that works very well. Our good friend Mindy at the Spring, and there's just so many organizations that are working closely together, not only on the domestic violence front, but on the child abuse as well. And I heard the other day a program that Uber has put in place where they will provide free rides for anyone to a shelter. And so, to your point, individuals feel like they're trapped and they have no way out. There's at least one more avenue open for escape, and that's something that we work on the domestic violence not only from the law enforcement standpoint, but from the prosecutors, not just to prosecute individuals and put them in jail, but to change that behavior. And we've found, as you and I know very well, but the public may not know, is that domestic violence is a learned behavior. And so we also have programs that focus on not only on the subjects, the adults involved with the domestic violence, the perpetrator and the victim, but also on the children, to make sure that they're brought into the counseling process so that they understand the significance of this type of behavior and that this type of behavior is not acceptable. So we want to try to break that cycle of violence in our community, because quite often it ends in homicides, what we were talking about earlier. And so we do everything that we can to try to avoid those domestic violence homicides. All right, so this is pretty interesting here. So many people are home binge watching Netflix and other series. So you're hoping that this may lead to a lot more tips coming in with some of the shows that are being shown on Netflix. So let's talk a little bit about that.
So there's a new show on Netflix called The Innocence Files, which is very popular, and it really focuses on the rare but unfortunate existence of wrongful convictions in our system.
Yes.
And no one who ever has worked in the system can deny that sometimes we get it wrong and that innocent people get convicted. And we at the state attorney's office launched a conviction review unit, a
Oh,
specialized unit within our office that seeks to identify, fix, and minimize wrongful convictions. We launched that back in November of 2018, so we're about 18 months into it. And we've gotten a steady flow of petitions of people claiming they were innocent that we can go and investigate. But now, as you said, as people are home binge watching, they've moved on from Tiger King, now they're watching Innocence Files. We want to remind them that we actually have a mechanism here in Hillsborough County, that we are one of only a few counties in the entire state to have one, that we're one of a handful of jurisdictions across the country. This is relatively new in prosecutors' offices. But it was a really important feature for us to have because our search for justice never ends. The idea that somebody is wrongfully convicted, meaning the innocent person is being punished and the guilty person is still out in the community, is just
right.
unfathomable and unacceptable as a prosecutor. So if you're at home watching the Innocence Files and you think, oh man, I wish there was something I could do about that in my community because I know someone who is wrongfully convicted. Again, it's rare that it happens, but it does happen. So we're encouraging people to reach out to our office.
Yeah, I was in this group, policing in America. It was a 3 year. We met twice a year, and there was someone from the Innocence Project out of New York in that, and she had someone come to the major city chiefs conference and speak, and it was an individual who had been wrongfully convicted of sexual battery and had spent well over 20 years in prison. And it was very interesting because she introed with his story and then just had him come up and speak. And I tell you, by the time he was introduced, just as a human being, I was so angry. Like, how could this have happened to this individual? And he got up there, and his concern, he wasn't bitter or angry. His position was that he knew all of this time that the guilty person was out there and was probably committing other crimes. And so, it really was an amazing. And while he was in prison, he became an attorney, and then he went to work for the Innocence Project. So it was a very compelling presentation, clearly, but it was just a great way to make that point and to show someone who everyone in the audience figured would be very bitter and very angry, and he knew that that would have consumed him. But it was very interesting to see that process and to know that organizations or divisions exist to go back and review these cases, because we have so much more available to us in the form of science now that we didn't have in the past. And so some of these cases can be reviewed. And our system is set up so that you have law enforcement that can investigate crimes, make arrests, but then you go to the next level, the state attorney, who's objective and looking at this case and decides if it's going to be prosecuted or not. And then you have the public defender's office that will provide a defense for anyone who has been charged with a crime. So we have, I think, the best system in the world, but it certainly isn't without its flaws, and it isn't perfect. And so it is. I commend you on having that safety net for individuals that may have been wrongfully convicted in the past, and there may be additional evidence, or there may have been mistakes made, or something may have been overlooked. And actually, there's another process on the other side of that for law enforcement with the cold cases, where individuals, families who have had their loved ones murdered, and there's been no closure, and those individuals who are guilty of that haven't been brought to justice. So thank you for the Innocence project on the state attorney's part. So what is it going to be like? We talked about this a little bit earlier, but what's it going to be like when the doors open back up? You have to have some kind of a plan because, you know, you're going to have all of those cases. You've got to make decisions. You've got to schedule things. Are you working with the court system to sort of pencil out a schedule right now? Or are you just gonna free flow that when it comes?
It's a little bit of both. There's a lot of planning that goes into it. I really wish there was a manual for this that they just left me when I took this job, you know, how to deal with the post-COVID-19 pandemic in the court system. Unfortunately, that book hasn't been written yet, but I guess we're starting to write it here.
Right.
Uh, you know, there are a lot of different issues that come up. One we touched on earlier, which is how do we deal with a backlog of trials? Another is just dealing with safety for the attorneys and staff and witnesses and victims who have to come into court. Picking juries is going to be its own administrative nightmare where usually we pack a few hundred people in a room together for a jury selection. Obviously, we're not going to do that. So just finding the logistics of how we do some of these things is a challenge. But it goes back to the communication and partnership we have here between the state attorney's office, the chief judge in the courts, our public defender. We are finding innovations that we never knew existed or that we ever thought we'd have to use before, from Zoom technology like we're using now, to hand sanitizer everywhere, to, hey, Mayor Castor, we may be using your convention center to pick juries in the near future. But whatever it is, we're doing everything we can to promote responsible social distancing in the courthouse, to minimize traffic of people coming in, and to make sure that we're keeping the criminal justice system moving forward.
Mm-hmm. And if we had only invested in Zoom.
Yes.
My goodness. We had Mother's Day yesterday. My whole family did, well, clearly it was Mother's Day, but my whole family did the Zoom meeting with my mom. It was hilarious. Classic, my mom. So she can play, you know, Words with Friends with people all over the world, but the Zoom, you know, she just didn't know how she was going to do that. So she finally logs in with all of us, and all you can see is the ceiling in the top of her forehead. But she got it all down, and we had an absolute wonderful day. But how about that aspect of it? Not necessarily my mom on Zoom, but from the judicial system. Have you thought about that? Like, what would be the legality of possibly doing some things via video? You know, having a jury in Zoom. I know you have everyone charged with a crime has the right to face their accuser, but are there rules as far as any type of technology being used for jury trials or for any other aspect of a trial?
Well, they're not so far. I mean, this is unprecedented. The US Supreme Court last week had oral argument over telephone and video conference for the first time in the 250-year history of our country. So this is uncharted waters for us. But we're using Zoom, for example, not for trials at this point, but just to hold hearings. So we don't have to bring the attorneys into a courtroom. If we have law enforcement witnesses, for example, our law enforcement agencies have made it available to their deputies and officers to participate in a hearing remotely. That way we can still do that work without having to bring people into the courtroom. In certain cases, we do have people sitting in the courtroom, but it's a way to minimize. We've utilized a lot of written motions rather than oral argument. It's been an ongoing challenge. Literally every day, my executive team is sitting down, talking with the public defender's office and with the judges, and we're figuring out how to get this done. And, you know, the weeds are pretty boring, but I think it's important for the community to understand how much we've been doing to adjust to this very brave new world where we don't want to just shut down the entire court system. We can't do it. There are too many essential functions that happen every day, but we found ways to do it. I mean, some of the judges are in their pajamas and they got the green screen on in the back, and sometimes we're having to rotate which attorneys come into the courthouse on what day, but we're figuring it out.
Yeah, it is. It's very interesting. So, one of the biggest, I would guess, technological advances in my time as a police officer was when you did the first appearance court. They used to have to bring everybody from jail down in the morning, and it was just a huge ordeal as far as security, personnel, everything else. And they set up the video uh, process where the judge could just sit and they kept everybody out at the jail and they would have their first appearance via video. So now, fast forward, this may be a little bit of a silver lining. You try to find something positive in everything. Like officers could do their depositions via video conference. There could be some efficiencies that you could find in this, or in some of the misdemeanor trials and things, have that done via video as opposed to having to travel all the way to the courthouse and take all of those steps. So, maybe some good processes that come out of this.
Indeed. I mean, what's the saying? Necessity is the mother of
Yes.
invention. And so we're forced to make some changes now. And even when we're back to a situation where we can, quote unquote, return to normal, I think we're going to continue to utilize some of the innovations we've implemented here to make the system more efficient.
All right. Good deal. Let's see. All right. We've talked about a lot of those. Any other programs that you want to discuss that you've implemented with your organization?
Well, we were talking about silver linings before in this. One of the unfortunate side effects of COVID-19, just in terms of the courthouse, is it's put a hold on some things that we've been working on. So, for example, there's been a huge focus throughout the county on human trafficking.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a little difficult for us to continue to hold meetings and do the work that the task forces were working on. But human trafficking remains a priority for my office, for law enforcement, for the county as well. We were working with the public defender's office on some bail reform issues to make sure that people who were sitting in jail weren't there only because they couldn't afford
Yes.
to post bond. We want to keep people in jail pre-trial, that is, before people have been convicted of a crime, if they're a flight risk or a threat to the community, not because they're too poor to pay bond.
Right.
And this has made it harder for us to move forward with some of those policies just because of everything that's happening with COVID. But as I said a moment ago, we'll come out of this hopefully with some new ideas and ways to expand on the things that we've been looking to do, whether it's embracing drug treatment for nonviolent drug offenders, to bail reform issues, to being able to aggressively go after human trafficking. These are continue to be priorities for the state attorney's office and for our law enforcement community, and they remain priorities throughout COVID-19. It's just we're having to address them a little bit differently than we would otherwise.
Excellent. And that's some great points that you bring up. And you look at all of the different, we talked about domestic violence, we talked about child abuse, but that's another thing that technology has really, there are so many advancements and just every day with technology, and it enhances our lives and our world every day as well. But it comes with a lot of the downside, the darker elements of it. And part of that is human trafficking, that there are individuals that will reach out to those vulnerable kids and young adults and bring them into the world of trafficking. And so I applaud your office's efforts on that. I know that that is a focus, as are a number of other issues. And the bail reform is something that is way overdue for a reform effort in that particular area, because quite often people would say to me as a police officer that that justice wasn't blind. If you had the means, meaning the wealth, that not that you could buy justice, but you can bail out of court, you can hire the best of attorneys and those types of things. So it really is incumbent upon us. And when I say us, not just those in government, but everyone in our community should be concerned that everyone is treated equally, and that we don't have these processes and procedures in place that unfairly impact different segments of our community. And that's one of the things is as the police chief that I used to always preach to our officers is be a problem solver. If you find someone that in your area to patrol, this was a particular incident that I could use as an example, that was driving with a suspended license, and he kept getting citations. And finally, I told the officers, I said, someone called with a complaint, and I said, why is his license suspended? And they said, well, he has a DUI and he can't afford to get his license reinstated because he can't get a job because he doesn't have a driver's license.
Right.
I said, well, let's stop pulling him over and giving him tickets. Let's take him down to the judge, get a work permit so he can get a license, he can get a job, and he can pay off his fines and go back to supporting his family. So I know that you personally and your entire office, you embody that philosophy of being problem solvers and understanding your role in the administration of justice. We want to ensure that everyone is held accountable for their actions, but the last thing that we can have is anyone being wrongfully accused or not receiving the same level of justice as others in our community. So I thank you for everything that you do for our community. And thank you also for continuing to help our community through these trying times. As you said, it's really unprecedented. And until you peel back that onion, you really have no idea how many different aspects of your work life that it's touching our community too. So thank you for being on our show today. And
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All that you do for our community, and thank you for the working relationship, among law enforcement, with a public defender, and with our community as well. So
absolutely. Thank you so much, Mary.
All right. And last, a favor, make sure you say hey to your daughters for me.
I will indeed.
All right. Tell them I miss them. I can't wait to see them at the next event.
Sounds good. Thank you. Have a great night.
Thanks a lot. And remember, everybody, text Tampa Ready, Tampa Lista, and Tampa Biz to 888-777. We still have our helpline open. That's 1-833-TPA-INFO. If you need to talk to someone about any issues, go to our website. We have Spanish speakers. Tampa Lista clearly is Tampa Ready Lista in Ready in Spanish. So we're sending out Spanish text alerts. We have Spanish speakers on our information hotline as well. And we will be opening our small business relief again. So please pay attention for that. That will be listed on tampagov.net, and it's under One Tampa. That's the name of the program. Our Lift Up Local is going very, very well. As I said before, all of the restaurants are very excited. We even have stickers we're handing out, our equivalent of a gold star here in Tampa. If you have reopened your business responsibly, then you get one of these stickers. Like I said, the equivalent of the gold star here in the city of Tampa. So thank you to all of our citizens. Remember, we are not through this yet with COVID-19. As we continue to reopen, the number of positive cases that we have will climb, but we have to ensure we do everything that we can to keep that to a minimum. If we keep the number of positive cases down, we will keep the number of associated deaths to a minimum, and that clearly is our goal. Also remember that even though the positive cases, the numbers are increasing, it's all proportional. We are encouraging everyone to come out and get tested. So the more individuals we test, then clearly the more positive cases we're going to find, but it's all a percentage. It's based on our population. So we are still on that downward curve. So don't let that increase in the cases scare you. You just need to remember your level of personal responsibility and take those steps. All right. Thank you all for joining this evening. Remember, I know this is breaking everyone's heart that we're not doing it Monday through Friday, but Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for our Facebook Live. Thank you all. I'll see you on Wednesday. Thanks again, Andrew. Take care.
It's your Bolero, here to let y'all know.
It's your girl Chaz on this scene. Here to let y'all know about good hygiene. Yo, coronavirus is serious. It could even be deadly, but practicing good hygiene can help protect your family. So wash your hands, wear your mask, don't even touch your face. I won't. Practice social distance, that's 6 feet of space. Back up. Out of school vacation, what an awesome break. Yes. But don't be out past curfew, stay home and be safe. Okay. Staying home could be fun if you know what to do. Netflix and YouTube, you can play board games too. For real? Corona can't be over if you stick to the plan. Just practice good hygiene and keep washing your hands. I will.
Yeah, we practice good hygiene. Yeah, we keeping our hands clean. Staying home, we safe, so we won't get COVID-19. We could beat Corona if we just stick to the plan. Every woman and man, just keep washing your hands. I gotta keep the germs away, so I'm staying inside today. Please don't be in my face. Back up 6 feet away. Sorry, no handshake to the doctor. Tells me straight. I'll stay inside. I don't go on. GTA when it's time to play. When you're out in public, make sure you use PPE. Personal protective equipment. That's how you stay corona free. So we all in it together. Every woman and man, we could beat Corona. Just keep washing your hands. Yeah, we practice good hygiene. Yeah, we keeping our hands clean. Staying home, we safe, so we won't get COVID-19. We could beat Corona if we just stick to the plan. Every woman and man, just keep washing your hands. Keep washing, keep washing, keep washing your hands. Keep washing, keep washing, keep washing your hands. We could beat Corona if we just stick to the plan. Every woman and man, just keep washing your hands. Keep washing, keep washing, keep washing your hands. Keep washing, keep washing, keep washing your hands. Hey.